Hello everyone, we are today here at the Military History Museum of the Bundeswehr in Dresden, and this is Jens Wehner.
Hello.
And we will talk about German tank guns of the Second World War, particularly about the tank gun of the Panther and of course a bit of the Tiger as well.
Yeah. At first, what do we see in this showcase? We see a muzzle brake of the Tiger tank, which was used as a weight in a fabric after the war. And there our curators found it in the 60s or 70s, I don't know for sure. Then we see the original Wehrmacht model of a Tiger tank, which was used by the Air Force for recognition purposes. Then we see the Panzergranate 39, so tank grenade 39 from the 88mm gun from the Tiger. Then we see a not original model, it's from the 2000s of the Panther tank. And below that model we see the Panzergranate 39 tank grenade 39, the tank cannon of the Panther tank. Why did we choose those two tank grenades? Because they were the standard at this time. So the Germans mostly shot at Soviet or Allied tanks with those tank grenades. And they both had, in general, the same technology. I think in the English nomenclature, in English categories, it would be APCPC, means armor piercing, capped and ballistic capped. The ballistic cap is not available anymore, it's away. And the cap is also at least damaged when it comes to the Tiger grenade. And then it has also the category T for tracer, because it has tracer, and it also has the category HE, so high explosive, because both had a little load of high explosive. If it penetrates through the enemy tank, then there should be an explosion to destroy the crew, to kill the crew, or to wound the crew and to damage the tank from the inner side. When it comes to the Panther tank, I think this is quite known. The Panther had a long barrel, really long barrel, L70, and so the grenade, the Panzergranate 39, was accelerated to 935 meters per second, which was really fast for this time. And it could penetrate 138 millimeter at an angle of 30 degrees. I have to say that sometimes the data on this grenade differ, but I just choose the most plausible ones for me from literature that I trust more than others, I would say. So sometimes you found that this grenade has a weight from 7 kilograms or even more, but I think 6.8 kilograms is more plausible, as I said, in the more trustworthy literature. But I would say I would discuss about this, because if you change these parameters a little bit, this won't change that much in the whole performance, in the whole picture of a tank cannon like this. And yeah, I would say it's really a standard at this time, so nothing special about the German tank ammunition that was mostly used at this time. Of course, there was the Panzergranate 40, tank grenade 40, which has sometimes the category high velocity AP, so high velocity armor piercing, which has a Wolfram
subcaliber,
a subcaliber, and a Wolfram hardcore, literally in Germany called Hardkern.
Wolfram is usually called tungsten in English, but sometimes sometimes in English it's also written Wolfram. I made this error once, and I used Wolfram all the time, and then so tungsten for those who don't know.
Yeah, that's true, and I would say that the Germans mostly made their power when it comes to anti-tank capabilities out of the barrel. So giving the gun really a long barrel. I think the Panther is the most obvious example, but also the long 88 used by the King Tiger or other Hunter tanks. And of course also the 88mm gun with a L56 is for a gun with this caliber. I mean, it's originally the Flak, the AAA of the Germans. It's quite long. You won't find a AAA with such a long barrel. Mostly they are a little bit shorter. I think the American is only a L50, and the Russians mostly used an L53 also. So even for a gun with this purpose, with this caliber, it's a quite long gun.
So basically, German tank ammunition was from the technology aspect, it was not that advanced, but they went for the longer guns to compensate for that, or they went for the technology of the gun, not for the ammunition, because I think the main difference is, I think, the British, which, as far as I know, but you read a bit more on this, mainly go for a better ammunition, but usually with a shorter barrel length.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, this is a thesis one could discuss, and I think some people will discuss it. I'm quite sure. But if you look at the 17-pounder, which was really powerful, it has a much shorter barrel than the Panther tank. But the grenade, the projectile from the 17-pounder, which has the same technology, I don't talk about the APDS, which was the advanced shot, the advanced projectile from the 17-pounder. I talk about the standard grenade, the APCPC, which is comparable to the Panzergranate 39. It has quite exactly the same performance as the Panther cannon with this projectile, but the barrel is much shorter. It's a L52 also, I think, so it's roughly 20 caliber length shorter, but it has the same performance because the grenade has much more power, it had much more propellant. So you see the British mostly invested in their projectiles, and this also explains why they had already the APDS with a Sabo to accelerate the grenade even more with really high muzzle velocity, which became standard after the war. So German way of making more performance out of penetration is, in my opinion, making a longer barrel. You can see it in the longest barrels that were used in World War II, L70, L70A1 with the 88 millimeter at the end stage of the war. British way was to make a better projectile, let's say it like this.
Yeah, with propellant and everything, yeah.
Yeah. So, and, but of course, it's also a sophisticated technology to make a longer barrel, because of course this has also some technological challenges when it comes to be precise and so on.
It actually comes to mind, I think for the Churchill, if I'm not remember, or if I remember correctly, originally the 57 millimeter gun, the Mark I, I think was longer than the Mark II, and I think it was cut shorter, if I remember correctly from my Churchill video, for the purposes of, I think the machining tools were not available, and the Americans produced it in license, and they built initially the longer gun already. So there was actually, maybe it was actually something with the machining tool setup of the industry that could be related to that they went for the ammunition here.
It's possible. I don't know why this is. Would be interesting to see why they choose this way.
Because I think the Mark I was it, and then is it the Mark II, which was the production model, was actually shorter, yeah. This is from memory, I might be wrong here, so I will edit it or add something, or add a quote which verifies this, if this is correct.
The interesting thing about this is, in my opinion, that if you look in the developments after the war, so let's say for Soviet main battle tanks or NATO main battle tanks like Leopard or M1 or whatever, you will never find a L70 gun. No matter what caliber, you won't find it, in my opinion. Maybe there is one which I have overseen, but in general you can see it's more the British way of development of guns, and especially projectiles that was used. So with a Sabo ammunition and even further the APDFS, so fin stabilized Sabo, and so I think in some way the German kind of development was at that end. It worked well for World War II, no discussion about this, but I think it was a dead end development which really was finished at the end of World War II.
Was probably also, yeah, I guess a longer barrel is harder to manufacture, because I know specifically for the Jagd Panther, the initial ones had a very long barrel, and then they switched to they kept the barrel length, but they switched to a two-part design, so that you can actually put them together. Because I think the first production models had a one-piece gun, and the one in Munster I think has a two-piece gun, and I mentioned that in my video. So yeah, they already had problems of their own in that way, I guess. That you can see it seems more of a. I assume that if you just put the engineer here, he says, okay, let's go with the longer gun, and then you get the manufacturing engineer or something, or the manufacturing, and they say, well, actually, it's more convenient to produce shorter ones, and they probably, and this is also, I think, the aspect which to a certain degree, which you see, especially in the Panther, because the Panther, from what I know, but you know more about this, was the first German tank that was more focused on mass production than the previous models, right?
Yeah, I mean, for my opinion, it's not proven that it was focused on that, but when I talk to experts and when I read the literature, they say so. And I think if it comes to the price of a Panther, of course, it was much cheaper than the Tiger. I think the difference is that the Tiger has the double of the cost of the Panther, I would say. And when it comes to firepower, at least in anti-tank categories, it's nearly the same, even better, one has to say. So I would say, yeah, the Panther was really more suited for mass production.
So, and also, so related to Cold War, so probably the barrel length to a certain degree could also be that they say, okay, we look more at standardization, and also to keep the fabrication cost and capabilities in check with the gun design, probably in a certain way as well.
Yeah, I mean, the gun was not really expensive when it comes to the Tiger.
But hard to build, because when you went to this two-barrel thing?
I mean, when it comes to the King Tiger and the longer gun, I think the longer gun has also the problem that it will bend more through, and you need from the metal, so from the metallurgy, how is it called? I mean, the science which deals with the metals and the ledgets and so on that are used, the Legierungen, as we say in German, is much more complicated with a longer gun, because it will bend more through, and it has to be stable, to be precise, and so on. And also for the lifetime, this will keep some challenges.
Isn't there also, I think, to a certain degree, a problem that the gun barrel develops a different heat at certain points, and that affects precision?
Yeah, also the weight of this gun, to keep it in balance. If it's longer,
you have a stabilizer
and so on. And you also have some problems with space in narrow terrains and so on. So a longer gun has some problems more than a shorter gun. And I think we have another video where we discussed this already. And so you see the longer barrel has also some disadvantages. It's not only that you say, okay, the anti-tank capabilities are much more higher. It's also that you have to say, okay, there are some disadvantages. And this is natural, because every technological system has advantages and disadvantages.
So basically, likely during the Cold War, also already some during the war, like you figured out, okay, what is the best barrel length for a certain trade-off in certain categories, probably. And there's probably production, precision, cost, and other factors, which then basically in the Cold War, it was like, okay, we know now what we're going for, because this was still, you could say, I mean, at that point they had a certain idea and knowledge what they were doing, but it was still not like, we didn't have the main battle tank at this point. And there was like, because if you look at the development of basically from, I think, post-war, shortly afterwards until the 1990s, or tanks, I might be very wrong, look rather similar in most aspects. There were, of course, some diversion, like going for the M60 with the rockets, or missiles. But basically, it seems like the most basic aspects of tanks are now clear. And then also there's not much a discussion or thinking about the length of the gun. Could you say it that way?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the most guns in Cold War, I would say, have a caliber length in the 40s or maybe 50s. So let's take the Leopard 2. I think it's L44. and then L55 after Cold War to make it a little bit longer. But you won't see a gun I can't see with over 60. So I would say the SU-100 has a L56, I think. So it's this 100 millimeter caliber with a 56 caliber length or so. It's the same like the Tiger, but with a bigger caliber. But you won't see any caliber length over 60. And I think also the most tank guns in World War II already had 50s and 40s as caliber length. And that is what I want to mention, is that the Germans with their caliber length of 70 or 71, it's really unusual and seems to be a dead-end development, because it was never used again, even not by the Germans after World War II.
I mean, you also had for the Panther III the 50 L60, which is also quite long in that regard.
Yeah, but this is a small caliber, and you have, for instance, the anti-tank variant of the 100 millimeter of the Soviet 100 millimeter is a L60, I think. So there you have L60, but over L60, I can't see where this is. Maybe there is one. Write
probably,
in the comments if
probably
you
there's
find,
something out there,
if you
some
find one
prototype or very few numbers.
Yeah, and of course one has to say it worked for World War II.
Yeah.
One has to say the German way of making tank cannons and projectiles worked quite well, too well, when it comes to the opinion of Allied tankers, I would say. So I don't want to say this wasn't useful, but I think it was in the end of development.
We probably can ask Jifton what he thinks on this. Why this
would be interesting.
This. And also Ralf Ratz, of course.
Of course.
Maybe I have a whole discussion on this.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Jens.
No problem.
So thank you to the Military History Museum of the Bundeswehr in Dresden. Thank you to my supporters, and thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.